This week on the Absynthe podcast, life management from real experts. Be the kind of person that you want to be. Tune in for more.
Hi, everybody. It's the Absynthe podcast, starting at 7 p.m. tonight, running for about an hour or as long as we feel like talking.
About as long as we feel like talking, Mark.
Here we have the main host, Tyler Holt,
Hey, guys, how you doing tonight?
and myself, Mark Ellis.
Hey, Mark. So what are we doing tonight?
From what I hear, gathering in through the grapevine, we're going to be talking about LARP and possibly other experiences like that.
It's
So-
kind of a little bit of an awkward situation we got here where we've started the podcast and our guests haven't yet arrived. So
Right.
had we a camera on us right now, you would just see two guys talking into mics, looking lovingly into each other's eyes.
It's not even a minute in, and you made it weird.
It's not even a minute in, and it seems like our guests are coming through the door right now.
Guests to arrive immediately. This is going to be great.
All right, awesome.
And we're going to have stuff to talk about, which will be pretty awesome.
All right, well, good. You guys, come on in, take a seat. This is the first run-on-set guest appearance we've ever had.
It's pretty
Alex,
cool.
come over here. This is your mic that I'm holding. This is where you're going to sit.
Perfect.
You know how to hold a mic?
Roughly.
Like an ice cream cone. I like that analogy.
Yeah, sure.
So now we have the classic three-person
perfect.
setup with 4 people on the set, so I'm going to be cuddling up with Mark for the remainder of this podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, guys, just so we can get your names, hello, Kaitlyn. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Tyler, I'm fucking fantastic. How are you?
You want to introduce our other guest tonight?
Sure do. The person sitting over to my right, which you guys can't see, is Alex Roper, one of my
Hey there.
really good friends and my DM.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to get nice and close to
Okay, cool.
just like this.
Nice. Okay, good. Perfect. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm just used to I do just a little bit on Trent Radio, so we pull further back from the mic, but that's fine.
Because Trent Radio's mics has like buffers and
Yeah.
wind resistance. They probably have pop filters on theirs as well. You're gonna get every single plosive on this mic. It's
Ooh,
going to
lovely.
yeah, it's
Good.
awesome.
So I can deafen the listeners.
Yeah.
Or weird them out with sounds from my mouth.
Yeah, actually, I've been thinking that like ASMR is becoming a huge thing on YouTube, and with these mics, I could totally set up like a binaural rig where I just use 2 microphones and feed them through different mono channels. What do you think about that, Mark?
I don't understand anything you just said.
You used to do AV in high school, right? So you know what a mono, like the difference between mono and stereo.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so a binaural microphone is a mic that it's a single mic that has 2 sides, and it's specifically created to record through those 2 different separate channels. And when you're doing ASMR, are you familiar with that? No, it's a short form for something or other.
Yeah,
Basically,
it's like a loud, really like intense in your ears kind of sounds, right? It's like you hear every noise.
the microphone is definitely very sensitive, so you
Yeah.
can get that. But actually, the approach to it is you do really, really quiet things, and you get this sort of like trigger, and it's been described as like tickling feelings or like itchy feelings going up and down your spine. It's supposed to be really relaxing.
Yeah, I don't quite get it. I've watched a few videos and it just doesn't work for me.
There are different
just get
triggers for
creeped
different
out.
people. Some people, it's like for me, it's whispering. I've
Okay.
gotten that kind of response when it's whispering. Some people, it's like scratching or like plastic. I would almost say, like, have you ever experienced that, like, when someone's handling styrofoam and you kind of get that gross feeling running up and down your... I would say
yeah,
that's
it's
the
sorta
bad version of that.
staticky.
And then what
almost.
ASMR is like, it's a good version of that, where you feel relaxed and calm. But yeah.
So sort of someone like if you like people like playing with your hair.
Oh,
sorta?
yeah. So that's another one, is that people will watch videos. So there's a really popular video online called, like, the world's greatest head massage. And you just watch this Indian guy giving people head massages, and it creates this ASMR response for people because they're watching like another person's head get rubbed. And there's some sort of sympathetic response that happens.
That sounds amazing. That might be my trigger, but
Yeah.
we'll
There
see.
you go.
They're really popular videos on YouTube.
Okay.
Tyler, I want to talk about dragons and fun things.
No more ASMR. We'll talk about dragons and fun things.
Woo.
So tonight we have Alex and Kaitlyn on for a couple of things. We're going to talk about a little bit of D&D. We're going to talk a little bit about LARP. I think that probably the best thing to talk about straight out the gate is a little bit of LARP. So first of all, what is LARP?
Well, LARP is live action role playing. it's sort of like if you've ever played any tabletops where you're rolling the dice and you have a character, you're in a fantasy setting almost. You go out and you actually be that character, and you get to hit people with swords a lot of the time, run around. People are creating stories, and that you just sort of play out. You get to make a lot of decisions that affect.
So there's like an interactive narrative where you take the place of where a miniature would on a tabletop game.
Yeah, basically.
Is it hard to roll like life-size dice?
Well, Alex, you want to?
Yeah, like that's kind of the neat thing about LARP is that right, it takes out the dice out of the game, right? So for example, like if you want to lie to somebody, you just straight up lie. There's no bluff check, right? So
Right.
for example, my first game, I bought some like alcohol, I think it was from a merchant for a really low price, and I'd been kind of watching some of the other characters around, and one of them like seemed like an alcoholic or somebody who drank a lot of alcohol. So I was like, all right, I'll hit this guy up and see if he'll buy it. And I, told him I spent like 4 whatever gold on it, and we negotiated, and I ended up getting way higher price because I just
Wow, that's
so rather than it being like
supply demand. That's awesome.
yeah.
And hopefully he's not listening to this podcast because I posted
Hey,
this
we'll
on my
tag all your LARP
Facebook.
friends. Yeah, no, that's great.
I doubt he will.
Yeah, hopefully not.
It doesn't
seem like a
matter because
listener
that would be
guy.
meta play, right? He would be.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
couldn't
Yeah,
take that
it would
in.
be. It would be, but meta.
So what is exactly? So let's explain that for people who don't know. What is metagaming or meta play?
What's a good way to describe it, Alex?
Yeah, so that would be like when you have outside knowledge that would interact with how your character engages. So, for example, my knowledge of history can very frequently interrupt my character's perception of events in a game. For example, I know that historically, people would act a certain way, and then therefore, a more concrete example would perhaps be, I know that Kaitlyn likes to play characters who tend to be magic users and friendly. So therefore, I, as a player in game, then go and decide to interact with her in a way that would maybe be aggressive, and I know that I can get away with that because Kaitlyn plays a friendly character. And my character doesn't know that, but I know that as a player. That would be metagaming.
Okay, I'm just gonna confirm with our resident judge. How was that? Was that?
I mean, I think that was a pretty good response. I think it has to do a lot with there's the frame of the game in which you're creating a shared fantasy between like all the other players, and you're like, we're going to do this thing. It's going to be almost a separate reality. And then when you take knowledge you have from outside the game and you bring it in an interjecting way, and it's sometimes hard to stop as far as you just know things and you just assume your character also knows that, but then you realize, well, they wouldn't actually know that. They wouldn't actually act this way.
And those are the more abstract sort of things of metagaming, like a more like concrete is if you've played a character in this world before, because it's the same world where we go, and you can play a character and that character can die and you can never play that character ever again, and you have to make a new character. If you use knowledge that your previous character knew and your character would have no way of knowing, that's also metagaming.
So how did you get started with LARP in particular?
You can start on that.
Yeah, because I sort of brought you in. So I came back to my second year of university, and my best friend, Shoshana Watson, had gone into it over the summer with you, Tyler. And you went once, though. So, I mean, whatever. Just once. There's still a really good picture of you up on Facebook. But anyways, she convinced me to go to one event, and I almost didn't go because I had a lot of schoolwork to do. And but she convinced me. I went, and I absolutely loved it. And then I came back, and then I think just this previous summer, I finally got Alex to come out.
Yeah, and I'd mostly been skeptical because even in the nerd community, there tends to be a lot of stigma against LARPing, which is really weird.
Lightning bolt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a
basically.
bad video of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of stigma around it. So like, I don't know, my perception was colored by that, but you like consistently described it as amazing. So I decided to I would give it a try. And honestly, I think it was lucky that I got the experience that I got, because I think had most people gotten my first experience of LARP, they would have hated it. But just circumstantially, everything that happened played right into what I think is fantastic about LARP. So it worked out really well, actually.
So I guess you come from kind of a tabletop background. What are the bonuses of LARP that you enjoy more than sitting around the table rolling dice? What are the benefits of going out to LARP?
For one thing, the one aspect that I really like is like it's actually really physical. You can't help but like get a lot of exercise and like feel like you benefit from that too.
Yep.
Yeah,
'Cause,
physical
like,
activity is great.
yeah,
Yep.
you're wearing like, especially if you're wanting to wear armor and you're running around. Like for example, I wanted to sprint and warn the town, that some bad guys were coming, and I was like, whoo, running in this like breastplate
And our site is huge too. So
it's
like
100
our
acres. It's
where
fantastic.
we camp, it's like all the way out there, right? Our town center is about what, a good 2-minute jog in
Yeah.
armor.
Yeah, that's from that particular camp. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's particularly something that's interesting about the way that you guys do LARP, or more like the places that you had talked about, the experience that you had and how. What is particularly special about the place where you do LARP? Is it, kind of tell me a little bit about it, because we have some LARP people who do LARP here in Peterborough locally, who seem like a small group of friends who get along and do it. What is your situation like?
Yeah, so actually just comparatively, because I've gone to that LARP in town, and that LARP in town is great because it's local, it's free to play. It's a lot smaller. Everyone basically knows everyone. They're very welcoming. They do play in the park, one of the parks in Peterborough along Water Street. In that way, it sort of detracts a little bit because you do have all of the modern outside effects.
That's
of
got
a
to be really,
game.
really hard for immersion.
It
when you're
is.
like,
It is really hard for immersion.
Yes, we need to go slay the dragon. Oh, school bus. Wow, did
Yeah.
you see that? No, I didn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
exactly.
exist.
Yeah, but
just
it's
refocus?
it's still a good game. Nonetheless, like the people there are really friendly. But with Underworld, it's a we just bought our own land, the place where I go Underworld. And going out there, you're way out in the middle of butt fuck nowhere, really.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to say that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Fun. Okay. So yeah, we're out in the middle of butt fuck nowhere. The site is huge. There's no outside influence anywhere. You are immersed 24/7 all weekend.
Yeah.
It would be a really cool experience, definitely. I find it interesting that the one of the pulls is the, I guess, physical nature of LARP. Like you get to go out and be your character, which obviously seems like a big advantage, a huge pro. But I mean, I feel like some people want to. I don't know. I guess it's almost a loss of escapism when some people, the asthmatic, or let's say the stereotype asthmatic nerd who plays in his basement. All of a sudden, he wants to go into LARP too, even though he's gonna, I guess, struggle with some of the difficulties maybe, but. Seems like it wouldn't stop people that much.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, no.
There were a lot of people there who like you would think would be like either physically unfit or like you said, like the kind of classic, but no, they really hold their own. And on top of that, with the
They
magic
do.
system that they have, like magic really is very powerful and allows you to do a lot of stuff. And on top of that, like not everybody has to be a warrior either, right? There are a lot of people who go there, at least that I've noticed, who've been like
Yeah.
merchants and like isn't like
More
Gregor just
roleplay.
like the magistrate, right?
Gregor is the magistrate. He can hold his own in a fight, but he's generally more of a he's a magic caster. I don't want to say anything too.
Well, that's kind of one of the things though about LARP that kind of bunks your expectation of the classic shut-in nerd, where there were some friggin' ripped people the first time I went.
Yep.
They're like
Absolutely. Yeah, and also of course, what's different about LARP than Dungeons and Dragons is you actually have to represent, the things you have in physical form. So if you have crazy dress or armor or stuff, there are people who make their own chainmail, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who make their own chainmail. We do have one person in particular who is a blacksmith in real life, and they make a lot of the armor that people wear. There's a lot of people who are leather workers who make a lot of the leather armor. And yeah, people work their level of physical fitness and their skills and stuff into their character all the time.
So does your LARP group or organization have a name?
Yes, it is Underworld LARP. There are a few locations all over Canada and one in Japan.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's not just the one location. It's an organized series of locations.
Yeah, the one closest to Peterborough that Trent students would probably most be interested in is the one in Fenelon Falls, which is about 45 minutes outside. But there's a lot of people who do go or pass by here, either from Toronto or other places, or people in Peterborough like us who do own vehicles. And if you post on the forums, generally one of us can get you.
Yeah, you have to go a little bit of four-wheeling once you finally get out to Fenelon Falls to really get to the site, don't you?
No, there's you get to the site and there's roads all the way out to the site.
Oh, is there now? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you can drive. There's roads into town center now where you
Right.
can go and drop off your stuff, and
That
then
way you
can
don't have to
come back
like
up to the parking lot.
literally hitchhike with your tents over your back, making this giant pilgrimage. That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah. No.
That's convenient for setting up. I mean, that's one of the most important things about playing any game, right? Is like I will absolutely turn down a game of Monopoly purely because all that shit has to be organized and put back in the box. So like setup and tear down, just as far as actual games go, making a good game, it's incredibly important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. And of course, we choose to camp somewhere that is not easily accessible quite yet. I think we were working on a road last I checked, but yeah, it's all about. But you can choose to camp in town
Some
center.
people
which
play
is,
wizards, some people play masochists.
Yep, basically. Yep.
Yep.
All right, well, cool. So wait, so you're a Magic user, Kaitlyn. So are you?
No, I'm not a magic user. No, I actually play a sort of skirmishy character. She uses a two-handed spear, really long spear. And she's also an alchemist, so I make stuff and I hurt people with it or put them to sleep with it.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like, you can have different races and whatnot in LARP, right?
It's very important, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different races. There's a lot of basic races that you can get just creating a new character. You can work and do stuff for the game and earn things called frags and get rare races and stuff like that.
Yeah, the races are really neat too because they all come with like identifying marks to each of their kind of like to each of them, so you kind of tell who people are right off the bat when you see them. So even for like the kind of more basic races, like I play an Einhir game, and the Einhir very simple racials. You just have to have like fur, clothing, braids of some kind, and then they also want you to have like kilt or flannel of some kind to represent Scottish aspects of it. But yeah, so it's really neat. And everybody kind of has their own unique one. Some are more difficult, more elaborate than others.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, one of the other cool races is Wild Elves. You wear pointy ears, which you can get downtown in one of the shops here.
Mm-hmm.
And you have like racial tattoos that you sort of paint onto your face, arms.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I mean, what other we talked about the physical aspect of LARP. How that's a draw for some people.
I have a neat. If you guys want, I have a pretty neat story for my first time. And like I said, for most people, I think it might be a turnoff. But like, I think
all right,
it's important to note.
Stories.
It's important to note that it was a
Yeah, your
select
first game was
experience.
interesting just because of where you camped.
Yeah. So I in my personal life, I do a lot of like adventure camping as well. Like I've done camping. So like in terms of roughing it, that's not something that I mind. So I thought that'd be kind of fun to do in LARP, right? Because the idea is your character 24/7. So like I set up sort of a tarp shelter rather than like a kind of classic tent sort of situation. Which was fine, and I kind of got everything all waterproofed. Like my very first night there, we kind of got in late, so it was dark. So I kind of had to do it in the dark, and I got everything set up. And we had watch because there were some rituals going on at our campsite or whatever.
Okay.
So it was like late in the night when we finally went to sleep. And I think like I was about to fall asleep at about 5 a.m. Like it was pouring rain out. I just sort of waterproofed my shelter. I was very happy. I was like just about to go to sleep, and I sort of let my guard down. Right, it was my first night at LARP. And then what happens is I hear like some noises outside my tent, and I'm like starting to be kind of confused. And then somebody tears off the tarp that I've used to build my entire shelter,
no.
and they start stabbing me until I died. And yeah, that
Brutal.
was my very first night at Underworld LARP, was that I was murdered in the rain at 5 in the
There
morning.
you go.
Yep.
So you too could have such fantastic experiences.
Welcome to Oz, bitch.
Exactly, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Same
newbie
thing happened to
crushing.
me.
Yeah, everybody else was also murdered in the camp. It was just also my first night, and I had
There
no
you go.
idea.
So you
camping with a lot
weren't
of
left out at
high-level
least.
PCs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was camping with a lot of other high level players. So
No.
Which I thought would provide
sort
me
of got
safety,
caught in the
but apparently,
crossfire.
No, apparently they already have the enemies, and
yeah.
Yep. You could say that.
It was a fantastic experience, though, right? Because like I don't know, like what could go worse? Like I've
Right, I
now
mean-
experienced the absolute worst that this game can provide, and I enjoy it thoroughly, nonetheless.
Yeah, and one
you
of the
go.
cool things that Underworld actually does is that your first game you get unlimited deaths for your character.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I
Bonus.
didn't even
Didn't
burn
even
it.
count. Usually, after that point, you get you're allowed 2 deaths. Your spirit is strong enough for 2 deaths,
Right.
and after that point, you do something called finaling, and your character's just dead forever. It is gone.
okay. I mean, like, permadeath is like a little bit of a draw in video games. There was like Realm of the Mad God and a few others where people are like, "Oh man, permadeath, it's this super exciting thing," and then other people are like, why? I don't understand it." But I guess it just makes it a little bit more attached to your character
Mhm.
because I mean, when death is cheap,
Exactly. It makes it that much more real and precious. Like when you've had a character for 2 years and you're on that last death, it makes you think about some things.
It
yeah.
makes decisions like, I don't know. I frequently risked my character's life on that first game because it wasn't super important whether or
Right,
not I
that's fair.
survived. But yeah, no, like even into the second game, there were moments where I was like, all right, and I'm gonna run away now. Because
Yeah.
running away is the most efficient way for me to survive this situation.
Yeah,
and that's
running is
okay.
good.
Exactly. And Underworld's motto is run, fight, hide. So you have to make those decisions which one you're going to do in certain scenarios. Sometimes you just can't win and you have to run or hide.
I mean, that's fair. And I mean, you don't need to be the fastest runner. You just need to be faster than the person with the base 20 movement speed, which translates into you need to have a slow friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
You need
one
to
of
have
the
a slow
friends
friend.
wearing armor. Yeah.
Yes. Or you need to be really good at hiding.
That's basically one of the greatest things about it. Did you guys ever play Resident Evil 4?
No.
No.
Okay, so there's a character in it named Ashley, who's like the president's daughter that you have to rescue. Spoiler alert, but I mean, this game came out in like 2005. Did you ever play Resident Evil 4, Mark? So after you beat the game, you have the ability to dress Ashley up in different costumes, and one of them is the night costume. So, because if the zombies got to her and then picked her up and took her to the edge of the screen, it was game over. But they can't pick her up in the giant suit of armor, so they would run up to the armor and then try and pick her up and then just fall over, and then you could run over and just like keep shanking the zombies up back and forth and back and forth, and then you wouldn't have to waste a single bullet because ammo saving in that game was huge. There wasn't really a place you could strictly buy ammo, so yeah.
Okay, so it's just as you found it.
So takeaway message there is mobs suffer against heavily armored opponents, I think. Is that it? Is that where we're going with? Okay. Moral of the story there, folks.
Yep.
Heavy armor.
Yeah, actually, Underworld has sort of an amoeba effect. They tend to mob people, and it usually works out. We're working on that.
So what does that look like? Is that just like so? There's someone that's like what high level and heavily armored with their sword or whatever, and they just send like 8 mobs after them, and like, they get people to run after them and just surround them, or what?
It depends. It depends on what we're fighting exactly.
Okay.
What we do. Generally, we try to hold a sort of like a front line. That usually sort of dissolves towards the end of the fight, though, as
Yeah.
people sort of
That's
go.
fair.
And,
As the end of the fight goes.
I think
yeah.
that's kind of the nature of combat, though, and I think that's one thing that's really neat about LARP. That like I don't know, you kind of get to see on a scale that you don't normally get to see or understand is infantry combat.
Yeah.
Really represented. Because like I don't know, I'm a historian and that kind of stuff interests me. But like, for example, on this last game, there was like a big, it was a kind of a big overarching story. We were invading this island. And there was all these insects who control the island. They're called the Brood. And we were fighting them like very specifically. And there was one particular battle where we had to push them back to these gates and then feign a retreat to get them to like fall into a trap for it that we built, which was like a fantastic little storyline that they had developed. But additionally, the combat that we did, there was so many of us, and we had this huge line stretching across this entire field, and we were advancing slowly. And we even like had sent like a group to flank the side, and they were getting pushed back really badly, and like I don't know, just like the actual trying to like maneuver bodies and humans into like actual flanking techniques and stuff like that is super cool to get to see.
Yeah, a lot of work, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but like the characters and the players are organizing that together, right?
Yeah.
They're saying we need to get more people out to that flank. You know, like who do we have that we can send?
Yeah.
You know, we need to keep the healers protected, and it's fantastic. It's really neat that way.
Yeah, we generally try to keep the healers towards the back. We have a few runners for them to get people off of the field and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And usually we get everyone. Usually.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
death happens, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
death happens.
And there's a big variance of morality in Underworld, which is
Oh,
pretty fun
yeah.
to deal with.
Oh, okay.
Because
Full
you'll
scope
have
of it.
you'll have players who are like firmly evil and but at the same time you have no idea who they are. so there are so many friendly people, and everybody's trying to make friends with your character. And you can't help but be slightly skeptical to everybody who's being friendly, because
Yep.
any of them could be waiting to stab you in the back later
Yep.
on, and and it's unnerving, but at the same time, it's very, very engaging.
Hey, at least you learn that quickly. Like, I mean, even the people who are really friendly, I mean, they can get taken over by something that's like controlling their mind, and then they can lure you out into the middle of the woods and then stab you in the back. I mean, that never
Not
happened
like
to
that's
me.
happened to you before?
No,
No?
never. Yeah, not personal experience at all.
Yeah.
No.
Dark.
Yep, dark like my soul.
Well, that's Underworld though, right? And I think that's one aspect of it that like I guess might be important to mention, right? Is it is a horror LARP, right? That's
Yeah, it is a horror LARP.
Okay.
We can get there are some, we call them mods, like the little stories that get run over the
Yep.
course of the event. They can get darker if you are worried that you might, suffer some negative effects by anything that's too dark, too
Right,
triggering
okay.
for you. You might want to have a good escape plan, like someone you trust to take you home or take you out of game if it gets too bad. Usually it's not. Usually people are fine even if they are a little bit worried. There are some mods where they use things like fake blood, stuff like
Okay,
that.
right.
You can get dirty with stuff like that.
so just important to note.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fair.
There was one of the last events that I went to. There was these things called brood, which are sort of like insectoid things that can.
Cool.
As I was
Monsters you
mentioning
don't feel
before,
bad crushing. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
insectoid swarms.
Zerglings.
very
there you go.
similar to Zerglings is how they were described actually.
Yeah, and that's a really big theme of what's going on right now at Underworld. And I was going to pick up some brood eggs to study because my character's an alchemist, just see if I could use any of it. And I just picked it up and it was covered in fake blood. It was I think it was chocolate syrup and some food coloring and stuff like that, and it looked really disgusting and my hands were really sticky and gross after, and yeah.
Well, there you go.
Looked good though. It looked great.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, it
it's,
looks
it's kind of
great.
about the looks for that immersion and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you mentioned out of game now. When you're in game and you have some real issue, you can get out of game. There's a signal for that. Is
Yes.
what I understand. What do you guys use for that?
Yeah, it's either a white headband or a hand on top of your head.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a thing people normally do.
Yeah,
so.
the white headband is I think more of a permanent one. Like for example, I had that on when we were packing up. My brother was feeling sick the one time we went, so we left a little early. So we were
Okay.
packing up our stuff. We had the white headbands on, and essentially the idea is you just ignore those people. Those people aren't
Yeah,
actually
you
there.
pretend they're not there.
right?
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Our-
They're
our
like the school
yeah.
buses in the park.
Exactly.
Exactly. Our shapers, our storytellers, and our NPCs who are non-player characters, they help the shapers basically get them to play characters as part of plot. And they will wear white headbands when they're going to and from places that they need to be.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, if someone was interested in doing LARP up with Underworld at Finland Falls, or if they just wanted to find out more information, where would be the best place to do that?
We have a really active Facebook group, Underworld LARP. You can find us there. We have one for each guild house. Underworld LARP Jericho is likely the one you'd be most interested in for one in the Peterborough area.
Oh, okay.
There's also a website. Do you know the website off the top of your head? I think it's underworldlarp.ca or something
Yeah, I
like
believe
that.
that's
but
what it is.
a quick Google search it'll be one of the first results if you
Okay.
go put in Underworld LARP.
We'll try to remember to leave something like that in the description or on our Facebook page when the podcast is over. So wait, so the Facebook page is Underworld, but then there's also different groups, and you said Jericho. So Jericho is the one that you guys go to up in Finland Falls.
Yes.
And so the other Underworld locations have different names for their cities.
Yeah, we have another one out in London area called
Okay.
Rallenwood. And then we have one out west called Ashendale or Calidor, sort of interchangeably. Yep.
Huh.
Neat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then so the characters can trade over from one place to the next, either if you move or if you're visiting or if you have friends at different, I guess, what do you call them, chapters, guilds?
Either one.
Groups?
Guilds, yeah.
I like the word chapter, however, it reminds me of Hell's Angels, so maybe not.
Yeah, no, yeah, chapter. You can do chapter.
Sure, why not?
All right.
Yeah.
Book, saga, novel.
Get a
Literary
bit
jokes
further
there.
away there.
Yeah. How far away can we go? Okay, well, cool. So the systems then are rather well unified. Is there a place where people go for just strictly LARP rules, or has Underworld?
There's a PDF book that they have online that you can access, and
and
it
is
has
that published
everything.
by Underworld, or okay? So it's something. Is this specific though to Underworld, or do other LARP groups kind of hold this as their Bible as
Specific
well?
to Underworld.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would say that each kind of I would think that each organization kind of does the rules a little bit differently. There's like a lot
Uh-huh.
of nuances to the underworld rules, and like they're always changing them and updating them. Like I think even I only started very recently, and I think the rule book that I read originally is probably out of date at this point already.
Yeah, they update every year. They will update with things that they noticed over the course of the last year to refine the rules, make them
Okay.
better. There are things like between different LARPs, like other LARPs other than Underworld, there can be things that are in common, and often there are, but usually they're different in a lot of aspects as well.
Okay. So what do you like say that the differentiation is kind of like between like I don't know Pathfinder and D&D, or if you're playing, there's just
Yeah.
different iterations
Yeah.
of rules
Yeah,
that are
it's
kind of
like
similar.
minor differences that
Yeah.
like maybe like individually those changes don't like make a big impact, but I would say like as groups they sort of probably take the game in different directions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I
Right.
mean,
There's also different ways of doing magic and stuff like that between different LARPs, different ways of doing combat. Like there can be pretty large differences, but like some of the very basics are similar.
right. And of course,
Mhm.
the rules facilitate the narrative that that's being told throughout the story. Right. It's an interactive story that people are setting up with the shapers. Right.
Yeah, the shapers sort of make the framework, and character decisions affect everything.
Do people ever just like piss on the story that the shapers are made? Just let no, I'm not going to go this way.
Yes.
I'm not
Yes.
going to.
Quite
So
frequently.
I guess then the individuals running the plot of the story are rather like liquid at this point. They're rather fluid with their storytelling as opposed to expecting it to go one way or another.
They've become rather adept at trying to steer it in a general direction.
Oh, okay.
But they are also very adaptable if it goes completely different than they're expecting. They sort of
Yeah.
It would. I
preparing
suppose
for-
it would take some a lot of skill and also a certain amount of patience because I can see someone setting up this huge, great plan and just be like, "No, my grand narrative."
No, we don't generally have too many shapers that are like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, what I've heard, well, at least being a DM in like a tabletop game and trying to organize your players towards some greater goal, I hear it described as trying to herd a bunch of cats.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely herding cats. Also, after game is herding cats when you're trying to get people in the car to go home.
Yeah.
But yeah, our shapers are very, very nice people and very, very scary people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think Dungeons and Dragons is an important comparison because DMing, I think DMing and shaping are very similar, right? They're two very like akin tasks, and what I've noticed from the shapers is that they are flexible just as Dungeons and Masters have to be,
Yep.
and they very often are. We had this one mod where they incorporated like one of those wooden puzzles where like they were always apart in people's houses because nobody knew how to put them together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those they tried to incorporate one of those into one of the mods, and like we had a timed period where we had to like solve this puzzle,
Oh gosh.
and it was impossible. No one could do it.
Grandma steps up. This is my time to shine.
Exactly, right?
I don't know why your grandma sounds like Mario.
Yep.
Yeah. So they had to kind of be flexible, and then they were like, well, if somebody dies, then we'll have the door open. So then people were trying to like, I don't know, sacrifice somebody, but then we all just decided to bleed on the door. Anyway, the shaper was really flexible and figured out another way for us to get through the door rather than the complex puzzle we couldn't actually do.
Yeah, you can never rely on your players to actually figure out a puzzle. It's not
Yeah.
nearly as simple as you think it is, sitting behind your screen with all the answers and like,
Yeah.
why
it's
can't
super
they put it
simple when you have the
together?
Answers.
But
Yep.
you realize then, yeah.
Yeah. So they're really great at that. I've noticed multiple times shapers doing the same thing that I do as a DM, like adapting their plan, being flexible, and really doing some really cool storytelling.
Adaptation is huge. That's a really important part.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and after about 3 games of playing, you volunteer every game to be an NPC, one of the people helping the shapers. Yeah, and actually, it's one of the funnest things that you can do at LARP, just because you can play a character that you have no emotional attachment to whatsoever. You're not worried about dying, so you can just sort of live freely for a little while. If you decide to NPC for an entire season of LARP, you might get a little bit attached, but that makes it fun too.
So what's that look like? You go to like the camp where they have like their organization for all the out of game stuff where like people will appear from basically.
Yeah.
You go there and you're like, all right, I'm gonna NPC for you. What happens next?
You'll have to talk to that. I haven't done it much.
Yeah. So yeah, you sign up for a shift before you get to game, so you know when you're supposed to go there. You get there. Oftentimes they'll be like, "Oh, great, you're here. Here, take this mask. And go be this thing with this shaper." And you'll go over to that shaper, and you'll get some stats, which are basically numbers, how much damage you do whenever you hit someone with a weapon. How much health points you have before you die, stuff like that. Armor, if you have armor as that character. Other times you can get there and they'll be like, okay, yeah, can you go and collect firewood for the fire, or do something like this just while we're ready, waiting for this person to get back to run this mod. And sometimes you can play a roleplay character, and it's like you get there and they're like, okay, go costume up for what you think this type of character would look like, and then come back here for some role-playing characteristics and stuff like that. You generally have a shaper or a monster marshal go out with you to sort of oversee things, and that's the person that you report to. If you're going out as a roleplay character, sometimes you go out by yourself. It depends.
That's fair.
It depends how much experience you have.
Right. So
for the role playing ones, I think generally.
yeah. So if they want to like send some person out as some like high powered monster, like Dragon's an exaggeration or whatever. They don't want them just running off to the low level camp when they're supposed to go to the high level camp.
Exactly. You have a shaper with you for
fair.
that. Yeah.
It's probably good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, comes with a runaway. It's kind of like random encounter tables. You're level 1, the dragon shows up, and you're like, we're going to run away now.
Yep.
It
gonna
can
be great.
happen. One of the things about Underworld, you don't want to walk alone anywhere, because you can just be walking on a path by yourself and some goblins leap out at you, or some spiders or whatever, and you're like,
Random
well,
encounters.
fuck, I'm dead.
The buddy system is really, really important.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
usually.
It's just
Yeah.
funny to
Generally
think
it
of, because
is.
what you're describing is like the setup for an NPC sounds so much more complex than you would. I mean, I'm sure that actually creating an NPC in a video game is not easy, but the actual behaviors and mannerisms, like translating that to real life, I think would be really funny. Just standing there. What's my job? You're a quest giver. You stand here. What's my hit points? You're immortal.
Yeah. Actually, sometimes our quest givers oftentimes are very, very mortal. Unless they have hit points.
Greetings, travelers. I have a nice treasure for you today to find. Kill him now. Oh no!
Yeah.
No, my narrative.
Yeah.
It can actually be a bit of a problem sometimes, and they often have a lot of safeguards against that, things that they can give certain characters.
Well, also, you guys will do not just like mini modules, but also a larger module throughout the weekend, right? So it's like branches. You'll have a main area, and then things will branch off from there to there. What would you do if you come to the end of the major quest, some fairy at a well, and she's just like, "Did you bring the great key of Osmondul?"
I think it's a balance of making the characters important enough that PCs, like player
Kill the
characters,
quest giver who
don't
gave you
want
the
to
key.
kill them. And then also making the really, really important ones really difficult to kill,
Right.
so that people don't really want to try.
Well, yeah, that's the classic thing, right? It's the same thing that you can do as a DM, is to like not tell the players how powerful a thing is, right? So like, I
They're
don't know,
more
especially as a
cautious.
first, and like we talked about with like how prevalent character death is, you don't want to risk stabbing that guy because maybe that guy can stab you harder, right?
Okay, so there's a few things. You never know if your quest giver is immortal until you try. And sometimes that blacksmith shop you want to rob is actually run by the 20th level fighter, and it's a really bad idea. But you don't get to know that.
Yeah, but also if you kill the really innocent farmer who comes up saying, you know, my kids have been stolen, if you kill that person and people find out, you're going to be like looked at with the shittiest of glares, and the farmers are the people who support our in-game town. You don't want to kill those people. You don't want those people upset with you.
But you wouldn't know what he had on his person until you killed him and looted his corpse.
Yes.
Well, you don't
So-
necessarily have to kill him. I mean, you can sleep him and then loot his
Sleep
sleeping
him?
body.
That's how
You
you
can,
get
like-
all of his stuff. Is
you
first you
can-
sleep with the farmer, and you
No,
make
no,
him
no,
fall in
no,
love with you. And then once he's
Well, I
actually
mean,
fallen in
you
love with you and
could.
married him, you can leave him and take half his farm.
No, I mean, you could.
Fucking
but, like,
looted.
or you can, like, send a spell at him to cause him to go to sleep, or you can throw an alchemy,
So
at him.
So we have the incredible elaborate version, which Tyler's just described, and then we have the realistic in-game. I'm not wasting my time with a farmer. I'll just use a sleep spell option.
yes.
Yeah.
Choice number one is always go the femme fatale route, even if you're a 23-year-old white straight male.
Yeah. I mean, like, also with the storylines, you were talking about having the overarching theme for the game, that game itself, and then the smaller ones within. There's also an overarching, like, world plot between guilds or chapters, as you like to call them. And we have one event every year where all the guilds come together in one location and they play an event. And usually that event has to do with the world plot.
That's pretty amazing.
So how does that look like when you're, because every chapter, or guild, or place has their own physical location, right? And so in that case, is that just like Pangea coming back together again, or do all of the people from the different guilds or groups or
Well,
whatever take like
yeah.
a pilgrimage to one specific location? Is there someone who usually hosts, or is it
Well,
like,
this
oh yeah,
one,
Roland Wood did it this year, you'll do it next year. I'll do the mashed potatoes, you'll do the
I don't
turkey.
know about if Warcry happens at Jericho every year, does it? Yeah.
Well, I've only been around, like,
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 2 years, and my first year that I was playing, it was hosted at a site that no one had been to before, and that's generally, I think, how they're trying to run it.
That would be kind of neat.
Yeah, and it was in Ontario, and everyone came to Ontario for it. But this year, since we had just bought the new land, and it was basically new for all of us, we did host it on the Jericho site this year, but I'm not sure how it'll work next year.
Yeah.
Right.
But in game anyway, the way they brought everyone together, which was really cool, was because they declared we weren't even we were on Jericho land, but we weren't in Jericho in game. So even the town center wasn't actually like the town center that we knew.
Yeah.
It was we were invading this island of Melinda, and we were speaking about the insects and the brood.
Right.
Yeah. So that was the story plot, was that all of the guilds were coming together to invade this island all at once.
So,
So we were kind of all pulled from everywhere.
Yeah, even though some guilds are part of different factions in the game world, we sort of all had to work together in that instance because we had the same goal.
And
to
there were
invade
there were
this
definitely
island grid.
conflicts still, but yeah.
Oh yeah, there were still conflicts. Yeah,
but a good enough big bad evil guy will fix that. But
yeah, until the very end where it all went to shit. But
well, I mean that's the looting process, right? I mean, like there's like World of Warcraft, and the raid ends, and there's the item, and no one's supposed to loot it, and then all of a sudden, surprise, someone looted it and left.
Yeah.
On a more positive
Suckers.
note, I don't know. Do you get any like info dumps when you like arrive at game? Because you're like, yeah, I see there's some tents over there. I see there's some trees. There's some long grass. Okay, I'm immersed in this setting. But like, what is this actually like?
yeah.
What do people tell you that helps you play along and
Yeah,
normally?
every new player gets a tour and a speech generally before we start game. Alex can actually tell you a bit more about that because he just got his like a little
Yeah.
while ago, and it's been 2 years for me. So
Okay, right.
Yeah, so the new player liaisons were super helpful. They kind of identify themselves. The way it sort of works, it's very like whirlwind process. You sort of arrive, and I think you're supposed to kind of get set it up. The first time we got there late. But that was okay. The second time, we were sort of the same situation. You sort of come back up, and there's like registration and log. So you
Right.
can pre-register, and that speeds the process up, but you can also register there. So they have to check your armor and your weapons. That's the first thing that they do.
Right.
So they check to make sure your armor, meets their standards and that your weapons are safe. Once that's happened, then you move on to log, and you do the whole log thing, and you get all your information for the weekend, and then. So the new player liaisons at that point, because everybody's sort of amalgamated around this big kind of area.
Right.
So they kind of like announce themselves as new player liaisons and kind of give the spiel about more game mechanics to make sure everybody
Right,
kind of
yeah.
knows how to play safely. But then very much kind of in terms of like learning about the world, you're very much like kind of thrown in, and you sort of have to like take a fish out of water route. I think. If you're making a new player and you sort of already or making a new character and you already know about the world, it's like a little bit easier. But if you don't know about the world
Right.
yet, it's easier to be like, I'm from a small fishing village in the north. I know nothing. Tell
I
me
know
your
nothing.
ways.
Yeah.
Right. So that
that's a good
people
approach.
would just explain some shit to me because I had no idea. But yeah, characters would just like tell me stuff, histories about, old Jericho got blown up in this or this way. And I was like, intriguing. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like,
Stories in stories. Now you're
yeah,
onto it.
because
Yeah.
the characters have all of these stories, and like sometimes you can't tell whether that happened in game, whether that like was a made up aspect of that character's story, but it doesn't matter because it all comes together as part of the diegesis to build your perception of the world. It was really cool.
Yeah, and just with explanations at the start of the game as well. They generally try to give new players a tour, like a small one of things that they should know if they've just gone to town. Usually that's pretty explained by some pretty helpful players as well, even people who aren't new player liaisons. New player liaisons also identify themselves by wearing a yellow ribbon somewhere on their person, so you can always
Okay,
go up to
right.
that person and ask them questions. On an out of game level, if you need to your first game, sort of take them aside and be like, "What's this? I don't know what this does. What the fuck is 10 massive?" And yeah,
Oh.
and then at the start of every game too,
Size they offer at Walmart.
yeah, and at the start of every game, everyone will sort of come together before we go in game, and the head shaper and usually one of the owners is there, and they'll go and they'll give a speech about sort of what's going on in the world, what rumors are like right now. If we're in a new setting, they'll give a speech about what it looks like. If you haven't been on the forums to check it out. And if you're in game, it's the middle of an event, you go to a mod, they'll sort of explain what it's supposed to look like, the setting that you're in as well, so that you can imagine it really well.
Right.
They do a good job of decorating things too, so that it looks really realistic.
Yeah, I was always kind of curious what town hall actually looks like, because like I always just hear it described from LARPers, and I'm like, but what is actually there? I'm curious.
Okay,
because, like,
I'll give you the bare
Town
bones.
hall?
Looks like Townsville from Powerpuff Girls.
Do you
Mark.
mean town center?
Like town center, yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, yeah, there's at the very very middle of town center there's a campfire. That's kind of that
Yeah,
center
okay.
point. And then there's just like a series of tents that radiate
Okay,
in a
that's
circle
fair.
out from that. There's a couple of permanent buildings, or like tents that are set up in the same place every time. So like there's some that are like physical buildings, and like I think people are doing that more and more now that it's their land, right? They can build
right, they can.
structures there, which is really
Yeah.
cool. But like the hospital that is like always kind of in the same spot, and it's run by a certain character, and I think they tend to set up their stuff in the same area every time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's like a big water, so like yeah, fire tents radiating it out. There's like some water, there's some bathrooms, and it's kind of just in the middle of a big field.
Okay. Okay. Neat.
So that's what it physically is, but I don't know.
I mean,
it
like-
becomes more than that, right? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Our excuse right now is that, you know, old Jericho just got blown up and we just got here. What the fuck are we doing yet?
I mean, that's totally a good excuse. you know?
Yeah. There's actually this one really cool cabin. It's actually like an RV.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
someone's painted it really, really well to make it look like a cabin. And they drive it on to site. I think they've been leaving it on site, but
That's pretty
and
awesome.
Yeah, it's really immersive. It helps a lot.
And the what was the one camp now has like they have a full like fenced barricade system going on, which is pretty
fenced
cool.
in enclosure, 2 buildings, a fire pit in where they are.
Is
yeah.
what is that camp again?
Ordo Knox, I believe. you're
Yeah,
thinking of
yeah,
who's doing
pretty
that.
intense.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty intense. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
I don't know. Tyler might have one here.
No, not really. No questions. No, I don't know. It's always kind of interesting because I do some writing, and when you're creating characters or creating a narrative, you always end up writing about what you know. Otherwise, you don't end up writing, and you get massive writer's block because you're like, I don't know what I'm writing about.
Yeah.
And I always find when I build characters, they're either people that I know or they're an exaggerated version of myself. How much does that kind of like shine through when you're making characters or role-playing characters, either in LARP or in D&D?
There's always a bit of yourself in your character.
Yeah.
There's always like at least one very small part that's like something of yourself. I find often that people's first characters are often a lot more like them than future characters generally are. My character right now, Renee, she started out a lot more like me and sort of deviated from that a lot as things have affected
That's called
her.
development.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's developed a lot as a character. I don't know about your experiences though, Alex.
Yeah, as like I can see it very easily paralleled between Dungeons and Dragons and LARP. And in Dungeons and Dragons, I can almost every time I have a new player, they very frequently play characters that they can easily role play, and I even encourage that to like go towards characters that have similar opinions that you do, so that it's easier for you to know how they feel. But usually, like Kaitlyn said, over time you learn how to differentiate those characters. But for LARP, it's even harder because like you're physically being your character, right? And especially for me, because I did an Einherjar, which is like they're kind of Viking-esque, so it was really easy for me to fall into myself. as a character in that world, because like I was doing something so close to like kind of my own aesthetic and my own sort of setup. So that's one side of it. But like at the same time, I could easily change that up and do a different character in the future. I just kind of wanted to ease into it.
Yeah, and that's often the easier thing to do with your first character at LARP is play something that you can relate to. And just like, and as you get more experience, like recently in Dungeons and Dragons with Alex, I just played a dwarf, a male dwarf who was an alcoholic. It was great.
It was pretty.
It was a lot of fun. I think I did an okay job just role playing
think you
it,
did
not
very
being.
well.
Yeah. It was pretty good. I miss that character a lot.
I do too.
Yeah.
Damn.
In LARP, because I mean you're physical and you're actually physically fighting, and there's probably a lot of talking and whatnot goes on in role playing. Do people ever need to stop and be like, okay, now I'm talking in real life, like I'm not trying to, I'm like, my character's a dick, but I'm not. I mean, are you okay? Is there any like checking like that, or has that anything like that happened?
There can be. I know recently, one with Alex's first game, actually, when we got like murdered in the middle of the night. The one of the characters who was responsible for that, obviously won't name any names. He messaged me on Facebook after, and was just like, "Hey, are you okay? You know, like I don't actually mean anything by it out of game. Like I'm just want to make sure you're okay. Everything's going well. Like how do you feel?" And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Like, you know, a death's a death. It happened. It seemed really legitimate. Like, whatever. It's really nice that you even thought to, like, talk to me about it after because that's really cool. Like, he's really nice. Like, the person is super nice out of game. They didn't even have to do that. Like,
We got, like, character building going on, exercise, an in-depth world, diegetic narrative, actually dealing with real-world problems like death. Come to LARP and we'll teach you how to deal with death.
yeah, you know,
But-
you make a lot of really close friends when you go. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of my friends now. Like,
Well, that's got to be
obviously-
kind of funny, right? Because you meet all these people, but unless you're around them out of game, the majority of the time when you're getting to know them, you're getting to know their character instead of the real person, right?
Yeah, it can be really it can be really contradicting, I guess.
You could like go into game and be best buddies with Yggdrasil, and then once he gets out of game, it's just an
Yggdrasil, okay.
absolute dick.
Possible.
Yeah.
What
It's
happened?
possible. Oftentimes with Underworld, it's the other way around. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people play very gray moral characters or very evil characters, and then you meet them out of game, and you're best friends. Actually, I have a really, really good friend, and him and I, our characters are like arch, like we hate each other. We despise. Like I would kill him if I could in game. Out of game, we're really close friends. And
funny.
we've actually become better friends more recently. But people are like generally the Underworld group is really nice out of game.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what I've
and
experienced.
Wimworld likes to take raccoons and nail them to the trees, but in real life, his name is Derek Smith, and he built orphanages.
Yeah.
That's the. Yeah, there are some like characters who like the way they act. Yeah, it's completely different than the way they act out of game. It's very interesting. Like yeah, and even I think where it becomes like most dark is when game is called and everybody's packing stuff up, and then like
Okay.
everybody's like saying bye. And I'm just like, this is super weird. I'm so used to all of you as your characters. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Saying hello and wearing band tees. Stop.
Yeah, coming up saying hi, like giving you hugs and stuff like that, and like, oh hey, how do you enjoy your first game? Like, what did
Just
you
waiting
think?
for a knife. in
Drop
my
your
back.
sword, Nate. Slash you in twine, and then it's just like game. They're like, hey, nice one, dude.
Yeah.
Steal next to it. Are you gonna catch the Jays game? All right. See you
Yeah.
later. What's up?
Hey, you going to that concert this weekend? Yeah, I heard it's going to be real great.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's super
Playing a
weird.
lute and then just like immediately rock guitar. That's funny.
Yeah.
Bards are playing. I mean, bands. Bands.
Getting some of that mixed up.
Hey, you want to listen to the Bard in the Box? Oh, fuck. Sorry. I mean, you know.
The radio.
Yeah, the radio.
Yeah.
Bard in the box. That sounds like
Yeah.
sounds like an innuendo.
It does a little bit.
It's my body in a box.
Yeah, that is another thing to note. Underworld LARP is definitely 18 plus, and they definitely do earn that rating.
Well, I
through
mean,
their
they already got
programming.
like
Yeah.
blood and stuff, right?
But in
So-
terms of like sexual and drug references, lots of them. So if
Yeah.
that's something that you're interesed in,
well, I
there
mean,
you go.
that's you're living in a world where there's magic and shit, right? And a lot of people kind of glamorize the medieval period, but I mean, we were all dying in our own shit back then, and
Yeah.
like if you drowned yourself, if you were an alcoholic, that was like the best thing you could be back then. That
Well,
was
most
top
people-
of the food chain.
Well, yeah, a lot of people drank. Like that was kind of like that was most people just drank, ale or wine because it was better for you than drinking water was.
Right, but I mean, there's
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, we started to get rid of like the sort of grungy part by making it medieval fantasy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
When you can conjure water, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Totally
like
better.
tryhards at LARP who try to go full immersive? They bring their own chamber pot and spit roast.
Chamber pot, I think, would be a new one for me to experience the
spotted that.
character with. No.
I'm taking 5 levels in shit slinging.
We did have a ship merchant one game, and he was
Oh, I
a
remember
goblin.
that.
Yeah, he was a goblin. He was like, I got shit for you. I got shit with nuts in it. I got shit with blood in it. I got some green shit over here, and it was
That's
actually like alchemy.
Insane.
Yeah, it was so fucking hilarious, and it was actually alchemy.
You can
raw
just do whatever the
materials.
fuck you want in these games, Mark. It just doesn't matter. It's like dropping down the rabbit hole.
I think that's the point of fantasy RPGs.
Yeah,
You can
sort
do
of.
whatever you want.
Yep.
Not saying it's a good idea, but you can do it.
These are weird people, Mark. These are weird people.
It's okay.
Shit with blood in it, man.
It's okay. We'll just take you out back later.
Okay, all right. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah. Well, we got a little bit more time. We can keep
Perfect.
going. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
we really haven't talked a lot about. We've been talking mostly about LARP instead of Dungeons and Dragons.
I can talk to both. Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about both, all of it, all the time. So I guess then both of you guys got into tabletop games before you got into the hardcore live action stuff, that raw shit that you inject straight into the veins.
Yes.
So
yeah, we had a gateway drug, and it was tabletops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah. I don't
So
know.
how did you guys do tabletops the first time?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I could actually ask this question
We-
of
we
Mark
just
as
do
well.
Mark.
We
yeah,
can,
Mark,
can
too.
kick
Go
in on
Mark,
this.
Yeah.
Mark, why don't you actually start and tell us your first experience with tabletop games?
So these people that are talking about, LARP and stuff, and referenced Kaitlyn and Shoshana were my friends in first year, and it was over reading break, and they were like, "You should come play Pathfinder with us," and I was like, "All right, I'll get back to you in a week once I know all the rules. It'll be great." And so I started, over that reading week, I just consumed all the possible content, like just this giant snow boulder rolling down a hill. I just read everything, and I was like, all right, I think I got it now. This sounds really good. So then I've just been playing off and on since my first year, which has actually been quite a while now, I'm
Nice.
realizing. So
Yeah, and very shortly before that, Shoshana and my boyfriend at the time were very much like, hey, my boyfriend at the time was like, hey, I really want to try tabletops, and I haven't had a chance to yet. And Shoshana's like, I have a lot of experience with tabletops, and I could probably DM for you guys and run it for you. And they were like, okay, yeah, Kaitlyn, do it with us. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck? And I'm like, okay, I guess.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Mine was a while ago, actually. I'm honestly having trouble remembering how long ago it was. Potentially, even before high school. I was in the whole scouting stream.
Okay, cool.
Through my whole young life, and so one time our scouting group got together, and I think it was my venture group, so it would have been grade 9 probably then.
All right.
We got together and we played one game with my one buddy, and he was DMing. But then my friend group wanted to play as well after that. So then they were like, well, somebody needs to DM, and then that became my job. So then that's essentially what I've been doing ever since. And when I began, I did things terribly. I was the worst DM. I was super forgiving and nice, and I was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. So I had players who were minotaurs and illithids, and they were running around taming dragons and craziness like that. But when I tell
Those games can be fun too.
exactly, and when I work with young kids and they express interest in D&D, I tell them don't worry about understanding every rule right away. The rules will come later. That'll come with repeated playing of the game. Worry about having fun with your players and telling good stories right now. That's if you can get that part right, the rules and the nitty-gritty, that comes later, and you can figure that out when you have players who actually worry about that kind of shit.
Maybe that's the biggest curse that the tabletop RPG like Dungeons and Dragons. It's you'll play once, you'll be like, oh, this is such a great game, and then your friends will want to play with you, and you're just going to be pigeonholed into being
DMing
DM for the rest of
forever,
your
yeah.
life and never get to play any players anymore.
Hey, we're running a game right now, and we've been trying to get Alex to come out.
Oh, I've been
to actually
trying to
play
find the
instead of
time.
DM. Yep.
So there's definitely that. That's the basis of it.
Yeah,
And I
that's how
mean-
it started for me. And like I said, then over time, right, it's just a building of that knowledge. And so I've been through multiple systems. I played 3.5 first. And then I moved. I never went 4th edition. I never. I
That's
gave it
fair.
a try. It never really caught on for me. Pathfinder I really liked, but like I kind of tend to homebrew a little bit anyway with D&D, and then I bet Eli.
Home brewing is sort of like making up your own rules and stuff
Yes.
like that.
Thank you for the
Your
for
own
the term.
systems. Yep. Yeah.
Important.
And then, but then we met a guy, Eli, and he does that way more than I do, and he writes like entire systems, and he loves that kind of stuff. He likes to get those wheels turning and do whole system rebuilds, which is awesome. Because I kind of latched onto some of his ideas and used those. So by the time I was done with Pathfinder, I was only using the broken, shattered pieces of Pathfinder put back together the way that I wanted them to be. So now I'm giving 5th edition a try, and it seems interesting so far.
Yeah, fifth edition's I think is pretty streamlined, pretty just organized towards quick. Let's roll a character. Yeah,
Let's get
take,
started,
20
yeah.
minutes. Yeah, we're good to play now. Okay, great.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what it's designed for. Whereas Pathfinder, by the time we were done with it, like we had it set up so you could do literally anything with a character. It was an insane amount of customization.
Yeah, and it took you like an entire day to make a character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
That's
that
pretty
problem.
cool.
Definitely. That was one of my hobbies when it came to tabletops. I'm like, man, I really like this numbers game that's here. And I was like, sometimes I just play it for the numbers. I was like, yeah, role playing's fun, hanging out with friends, talking in character and stuff. That's all great. And then part of me's like,
But how
I'm
can I do
alone
the
with
most
5 hours to
damage?
kill. What am I going to do tonight? And it's like, ooh, I'm going to make a level 8 paladin.
Yeah, you just have like a book of character sheets.
I just build characters just because I thought it was kind of a fun.
I have binders on binders of
Yeah.
character sheets, whether they're players, other people's players, NPCs, just binders of them.
Yeah. Do you have my character sheets?
Some of them probably.
Because
You
I'm
could-
I'm
you
not
could
sure
get
where
them
my
back.
character sheets
I
are.
have some of your character sheets.
I would want to.
Oh yeah, you're making me a character sheet right now, actually.
Oh
for
yeah, I
your
got to do that
birthday.
too. What
Yeah.
character are you going to play? I don't
What
know.
actually is it now?
I don't know yet. I mean,
Okay,
could be
cool.
anything.
As
You
long
gave
as
me
it's
absolutely
badass.
no guidelines. You're like badass, and I was like,
Yeah, is that
Right,
this
so I'm
Sunday?
pretty
Those
sure
are
that could be-
guidelines. You can't really make like a bad. Like I mean, I guess you could try hard, but like
I could make like a
badass
really
healer.
like pansy bard or something that's just not good at anything. But I feel like that would be mean.
Well, we're approaching time now, guys, so
No
we're going to
worries.
wrap up for the night. It's been great having you guys on. So just one more time for those people out in TV land. If they were interested in getting a hold of some information for LARP, where should they search?
Just do a quick search for Underworld LARP on Google or go to Facebook and search Underworld LARP Jericho.
Okay.
Yep.
And they'll be able to find information there. And
Important thing to note, actually, that I think don't think we mentioned yet. It might be really good for first-time players. Is your first game's free, so if you want to come out and try it,
first
it's
game's
free.
free.
It's not even. You don't even. There's nothing to lose. There's only a weekend of fun to gain.
go out, try it, read up some materials maybe before you go. You want to learn the rules before you play a game. But
Might be a good idea.
yeah. So that's been great. Thank you guys both for stopping in. Thank you, Mark, again for being my my co-host, my wingman, my brosy bro. And tune in again next week, same time, same place, 7 p.m. for next week's Absynthe podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.